I wanted to make a quick video about this because I guess it's been 13 or however many weeks it was needed for this, and Wowhead and people in general have determined what the new seasonal 12-week rotation is going to look like. So I've already covered a lot of stuff about affixes, especially Prideful, and the other new affixes, which are also talked about in this article. So if you haven't heard about those yet, there should be a video on the playlist that you could take a look at. But what we want to talk about is the actual 12-week rotation, and I want everybody, I don't normally ask for stuff like this, but I want everybody to give me what their least favorite week is going to be and what their favorite week is going to be in the description, because I really want to hear other people's thoughts on this. I actually made a little bit of a chart on a video. I made a video trying to explain fixes, and I had the routes here and stuff from BFA. But so I kind of graded all of the things, and I put, like, you know, a little bit of a explanation for what I think is the worst dungeon for them. So for example, so this is what it used to be. This is week 1 through 12. I think it was week 1 through 12 of Shadowlands, though, because people had different weeks, but, or of I'm sorry, season 4. But anyway, so yeah, we had Fortified Bolstering Grievous. Okay, I felt like that was the hardest week because Grievous and Bolstering just really suck together. But yeah, Bolstering in general is bad. And then, you know, you have the rest of them: Tyrannical Raging Explosive, Fortified Sanguine Grievous, Tyrannical Teeming Volcanic, which is like one of the easier weeks. I'd say that's a push week, right? So that's what I'm asking you. Like, what do you think of the new push weeks? What do you think is the new hardest week? And how will this impact you? So let's take a look at what we actually have here, okay? And we'll try to compare it to what we don't have anymore. All right. So, so first of all, it's hard to say like comparatively side by side, but I'm gonna give that a try. So the first week, Fortified Bursting Storming. Okay, so if you haven't seen Storming, it's now like a new volcanic, puts a little tornado out there. But in terms of, was there a Fortified Bursting? Yeah, so I have that as week 9, Fortified Bursting Volcanic, okay? And I have that called a push week. So if that's the first week of the season of the expansion, then that's going to be a great week to start. And I can already tell the next week is going to be a tough week. So they do this a lot. It seems like they put like a really, really easy week the first week, and then the second week sucks. This has happened quite a lot. So you see week 2 is actually Tyrannical Sanguine Grievous. Now, yeah, a lot of people are commenting on the fact that Tyrannical and Grievous has returned, which was not a combo in Shadow or in BFA. That it was, and they removed it at some point. So what? Let's see. So that first week was here. Yeah, it used to be Tyrannical Raging Necrotic after that. So they changed it all around. But Necrotic is no longer in the game. Or, I'm sorry, Raging. No, yeah, Raging. No, Raging's still in the game. Forget it. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's the following week. So then next up is Fortified Inspiring Explosive, which is completely different than what it used to be. It used to be Fortified Teeming Quacking, which is, yeah, I guess they're not really doing it in order. They probably just made a whole new set. So, but anyway, if you haven't seen Inspiring, it's basically like a holdover from season 3's seasonal affix. You should check that out. Then there's Tyrannical Raging Quacking, which is definitely not, I mean, I don't know. We'll see how these play out. We'll talk about them at the end. Fortified Bursting Volcanic is week 5. That sounds like a good one to me. Tyrannical Spiteful Grievous. Again, another Tyrannical Grievous week, which is definitely something to keep in mind. And then Spiteful, another new affix if you haven't seen it. This is actually one of the cooler ones. I like this a lot. Mobs basically come from dead corpses and try to kill you, but they like kind of gradually die, or you can kill them, or you could stun them, freeze them, whatever. Anyway, then 7 is Fortified Bolstering Storming. 8 is Tyrannical Inspiring Necrotic. So Tyrannical Necrotic again. Another one that I don't believe existed, right? Oh no, that did exist. Yeah, we had that happen. Not a big fan of Tyrannical Necrotic. Actually used to happen twice, so is it only happening once now? No, it's still happening twice. Anyway, no change there. So wait, this looks like the patterns are similar. So here, we'll look at that again. Fortified Sanguine Quacking is 9. 10 is Tyrannical Raging Explosive. 11 is Fortified Spiteful Volcanic. And 12 is Tyrannical Bolstering Necrotic again. So that is actually not... Here, let's just look at it again. Just pull this back on the screen here. But, yeah, so the way it used to work was, you know, you would cycle through these, like just indefinitely for the whole season. So you assume that's going to continue in Shadowlands, and people would like plan their whole year around these push weeks. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, like, what do you guys think immediately? Let's see if we could assign so now I'm going to assign a grade like I did here to every single one of these. And I'll talk a little bit about my early prediction on what dungeon might be the best and worst, or probably mostly the worst. So Fortified Bursting Storming. What do I think about that? I don't think that's a bad week at all. In fact, I think a lot of people are going to be running a lot of range, and Storming is going to be just a free affix if you have no melee. Just like Volcanic was kind of a free affix if you had no range. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a push week, honestly. I think it's probably going to be one of the easiest weeks in the game. So, I don't know. Hardest dungeon, though, in terms of what you'd see from hardest dungeon is a dungeon that has a lot of small mobs that do contribute bursting, and I bet probably storming too. So maybe Plaguefall. Plaguefall has a lot of small mobs that you fight at certain different points in the dungeon. But if there's another dungeon out there like that, it would be the one that I would pick. I'm drawing a blank on whether or not there is a lot of that stuff out there. There's a little gauntlet in Theater of Pain that might be a problem with that in mind, but I don't know how that would work. Anyway, Tyrannical Sanguine Grievous. Okay, so that looks to me like that could be one of the hardest weeks in the game. Tyrannical Grievous back actually twice. And that's probably a big deal for a lot of healers. Now, Tyrannical Grievous used to be ridiculous because there's some bosses that just applied it and it was just, you couldn't do it. So, but Grievous itself has been made a lot easier, as we've talked about. So I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as bad as it used to be, but still probably looked at as one of the hardest weeks. And Sanguine, not as big of a deal this expansion. The last expansion, like when we have Sanguine, we talk about Tol'Degor. Literally, it's even though it's an easy week, Tol'Degor still sucks just because of Sanguine. So will there be a dungeon like that this time around? Sanguine's also been nerfed, so if you don't know that, you should check that out. But will there be another? I think it's going to be Sanguine Depths, which is ironically named. But yeah, I think that dungeon is going to suck again with Sanguine. But it doesn't even matter because Sanguine's been nerfed so bad that it's kind of just not a problem anymore. So really, the big thing will be, will there be a boss that just does a ton of Grievous stacks that you just can't get out? And I'm sure there is. I can already think of a couple bosses, like the last boss in Spires of Ascension, just does a lot of constant damage. Yeah, probably any boss like that. Maybe the Tears, the Reign of Tears or whatever that is on last boss in Plaguefall. Probably could find something like that on every boss. So yeah, I think it's going to be tough. Plaguefall especially, Plaguefall actually has a couple bosses that do a lot of AoE, so that might be really tough. But I definitely think that's going to be one of the hardest weeks. Then we have Fortified Inspiring Explosive. Now, if Explosive stays the way it does now, it's just a complete joke of fix. So this should be looked at as a push week every time Explosive comes around. But Inspiring is going to be interesting. I think people are going to struggle to get used to it. But I think for the most part, it's not going to have much impact at all. So I could easily see this being looked at as a push week. But we'll see where it's placed. Obviously, before I can say what the worst dungeon is, I have to know where they placed Inspiring. But the worst dungeon for that week would be a dungeon where there's a really bad Inspiring mob. Like some mob that is just really screwing you. It's going to block the casting interruption of probably major mechanics like interrupts, like heals or something huge, right? I can't really think of anything off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's a dungeon out there that could be placed like a bad Inspiring mob. So if there's nothing like that and it's normal, like every pack is pretty normal and Explosive continues to be really easy, it looks like a push week again. Then we have Tyrannical Raging Quacking, and I think this is another one that's just, this is like a really easy combo because first of all, Tyrannical and Raging, that they don't interact, right? It's only non-boss enemies, and Raging can still be dispelled. So Quaking is always going to be an easy affix now that they changed it a while back. So as long as they don't change it back to the way it was in the middle of BFA, this is another great week. I mean, it depends, like Fortified and Tyrannical, how different are they? How important is the difference between them? If Tyrannical is still way worse than Fortified, then you probably aren't ever going to see anyone call this a push week, but this looks like a really easy week to me. So again, the only thing that would matter would be, first of all, tight corridors. So this is probably going to be a tough, and I do think that this week will be particularly bad for Sanguine Deaths because all four bosses are really tough. They're all, Tyrannical will make that harder. There's a lot of mobs that do like dangerous ass things that you do not want them to get enraged. and there's like tight corridors. So I think this week, this clear winner here, Sanguine Depths for this week is gonna be tough. Then we have Fortified Bursting Volcanic again. And again, Volcanic is like always looked at as push week. Whenever this comes around, it's always looked at. If you remember, we actually have what we called 3 push weeks. One of them was Skittish, which has been removed from the game. But yeah, the other 2 were with Volcanic. The 4th Skittish was on Bolstering, which is a lot of people look at that as a hard to fix. So yeah, but in general, if you saw Volcanic or Skittish, you looked at that as a push week. So that doesn't look like that's changing. And I would say there's a couple other affixes added to that now with Explosive and potentially also Storming. I mean, Storming is kind of a pain, but it's really doesn't do anything. Like, it's just not that big of a deal unless that really high keys, it starts crushing people. But anyway, so yeah, this is probably going to be another great week. I mean, we set it up here. It's actually the same set of affixes, Bursting and Storming. Storming is just kind of the opposite of Volcanic, like the end, like kind of the yin and yang of Volcanic. So another push week. We got a lot of weeks that look like they could be really easy, right? Pretty much every fortified week so far. But anyway, Tyrannical, Spiteful, Grievous. So this is another one of these weeks where the main affix does not, like, well, this level 2 affix, the second affix, does not interfere with the level 4 affix. You know what I mean? So Tyrannical and Spiteful have no impact on each other. But it is Tyrannical Grievous again. So it depends. It depends on how hard Grievous is for people. It's probably going to be a really bad week, though. Pretty much any time you see Grievous, you know, Grievous and Bolstering, these are probably looked at as the hardest affixes now. So then we have Fortified, Bolstering, Storming. So again, it's going to depend a lot on Storming, but this is probably going to be one of the harder weeks. I mean, it's probably the hardest for Fortified week, right? You know what I mean? Like Fortified Bolstering is always bad. So there's been no changes to Bolstering despite Faxi trying to lobby for some. Yeah, there has not been any. So this is probably going to be the hardest Fortified week, depending on how difficult Tyrannical is compared to Fortified. This might be one of the hardest weeks in general. There's another Bolstering down there, but we'll get to that. Anyway, Tyrannical, Inspiring, and Necrotic, which is my least favorite affix in the game. Necrotic, I just can't stand it. But again, Inspiring, no impact on Tyrannical, but Necrotic does have a major impact on Tyrannical. So, but for hardest boss here, Fortified, Bolstering, it's any dungeon that has a ton of trash, which could be pretty much all of them. But yeah, you'll see probably Plaguefall, I think, is going to end up being on that list again, because there's a lot of kind of awkward packs. I've yet to do that dungeon with Bolstering, but I can imagine that most of it bolsters. And there's a lot of small shit that you just like, especially early and especially late, that is just going to be a real pain in the ass. But anyway, so Tyrannical Necrotic would be the same thing. Is there any dungeon that has bosses that have a lot of ads on them? And nothing immediately comes to mind, but I'm sure there's something that has any boss with ads on it is really, 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 really bad for Tyrannical Necrotic. Typically, Tyrannical Necrotic isn't that big of a deal because it's the trash that usually is the worst part of it. And I actually think that... Oh yeah, look at that. There's no more Fortified Necrotic. That's interesting. Tyrannical Necrotic. Oh wait, was there never a Fortified Necrotic? Oh, that's weird. I guess there was in Legion, maybe? I had a lot of problems with that in Legion, I thought. Maybe I thought it was recently too. Well, okay, no change there. But anyway, yeah, it kind of sucks because if there's ever a boss with Necrotic coming into play, then you have a really big problem. Otherwise, if it's just a single target, it doesn't really stack up that much, so it doesn't really cause any problems. But I'd say the good thing about Necrotic this time around is I can't really think of a single area where there's like a snake pit or like the Raven or the bats or whatever in that dungeon in Legion. I'm drawing a blank, but there's nothing like that this expansion, I don't think. Again, I should have thought more about this, but this is what I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this kind of stuff. Fortified Sanguine and Quacking is another week that I think is going to be probably looked at as a push week, because again, Sanguine now is back to being really easy. It was looked at as really easy in Legion, and then it was really hard in Shadowlands or BFA, and that was because it's just the dungeon design had nothing to do with the affix. So now that they nerfed the affix, it doesn't even matter what they do. It's going to be probably one of the easier affixes again. And then again, but so this will be the same thing. Any dungeon like that has short hallways and tough corridors. So that you really start to think about a couple of them. Theater of Pain too could be looked at like that, because a lot of the places you have to fight in are very small. So something to keep in mind. Theater of Pain and Sanguine Depths might be really tough with these two affixes here. And they're both here on 1 week, so that could be pretty rough. Yeah, actually, that could be really rough. Sanguine and Quack. This might actually be really tough. Underlying, probably people are going to overlook this week, but this could be a really tough week. I remember actually we had Sanguine Quacking was in the game the whole time, right? Teaming. Where is it? Yeah. This week has not changed. Sanguine Quaking was always in the week. Looked like an easy week for a lot of people after they nerfed Quacking, but I'd say that for the most part, it was the affix, like the 2 affixes that did the most damage to the players. I remember looking at that early in like season 2, and we had taken more damage from Sanguine plus Quaking than the rest of the dungeon put together, and I think it was like probably way more. It wasn't even a small amount. But anyway. Tyrannical Raging Explosive again. This is probably a really easy Tyrannical week, like a really easy Tyrannical week. Raging again has no impact on Tyrannical. It's very easily handled, and Explosive is just a joke now. So unless there's a boss like there was in Temple of Cithralis that has a lot of ads that are kind of fixed and spread out around the room, and Explosive spawns near them and there's nobody near them to deal with them, then it's really not going to be a problem. I think it's probably going to be, honestly, I think like the hardest to fix in the game is going to be Tyrannical, like for sure. They nerfed all the really bad combos, so you know, Grievous might still be bad and bolstering is going to still take a lot of time, but you know, so many of these affixes are just not dangerous anymore. It's kind of crazy compared especially to start a BFA. It's really crazy. Fortified Spiteful Volcanic. I do think this is going to be a week that throws people for a loop, though, because it's got Volcanic, but Fortified Spiteful. Like, I think people are going to see this affix and not handle it well early in the expansion. So, again, any dungeon. I think maybe one of the dungeons that does this the worst is, what's that? Halls of Atonement, okay? If you haven't done Halls of Atonement, there's a lot of, it's got a lot of like pull potential, like mobs that are in a straight line, kind of like, you know, it's almost like there's like boom boom boom, like pack. So I think a lot of people are going to try to do a lot of combination pulling, and that's a good thing, obviously. But when you have Spiteful, it's going to get pretty bad. Obviously, when you have bolstering, people know how to deal with it. But my point is, people aren't going to know how to deal with it, and people are going to die to these things. I've had a couple people die to them just outright. They're just standing there punching them, and they're probably like, "Little tank get threat," you know what I mean? Like they just don't. It's not obvious. And these packs that you're going to chain pull in this quick succession are going to, these mobs are going to stay up. Like you're going to chain pull and you're still going to be in combat with the previous pack. So thankfully they changed potion CD, because otherwise this affix would be horrible. But yeah, luckily all you got to do is deal with them, freeze them, root them, stun them, maybe even, and they'll be good enough. And I don't know why there's an asterisk. Is there an explanation of that? Week 12 has not occurred on Shadowlands Beta yet. However, we are currently in Week 11 on Shadowlands Beta, and there's only 1 level 4 and 7 affix that have not been repeated. So while unconfirmed, it seems likely. Oh, good. So we'll take a look at this next week then. So next week should be, oh wow, the worst possible week. Fuck. Yeah, I can't stand this week. Tyrannical Bolstering Necrotic. So this is definitely the worst week in the game, right? No doubt about it. Bolstering when it's not unfortified is not any better, honestly, because you can't, like, typically when it's Tyrannical week, when it's fortified week, you want to be like, all right, let's pull like a normal amount, conservative maybe. This is like, oh no. You want to pull big when it's Tyrannical because you want to get all the trash out of the way, but you can't because of bolstering. So I'm telling you, mark this down, okay? Bolstering is really, really bad. There's this area right in front of the first boss of Plaguefall. Has all these little slimes. There's like 30 of them, okay? If people pull all 30 of them, and then they explode when they die, okay? So that's really, I'm pretty sure that's really bad with bolstering, okay? So I'm just marking my words right now. Tyrannical, if this is actually what the week is, it probably is, because there's no other bolstering. Tyrannical Bolstering Necrotic. This is going to be the worst possible week, and we're going to be live doing it next week on the beta, so we'll see how it goes. But I cannot believe... there's going to be some dungeons like Plaguefall that are just going to be horrendous for it. So I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts. I made this video because I didn't really have a lot to say, but I really want to hear your thoughts on it, because I usually feel like I learn a lot about how the community plays the game when I, this is a topic that I'd love to hear somebody else talk about, but there's nobody else out there talking about it. So figured I'd make a little video, give a place to talk about it. So I look forward to seeing the comments. I'd love to hear what you think is going to be the best week, why, what you think is going to be the worst week, why. Maybe if you know anything about the dungeons, what dungeons you think are going to be particularly bad with any of these affixes or any of these weeks. So thanks for watching. We will see you in the next one.